So we continue our summer Psalms sermon series, Finding Rest in God, today, as we get to Psalm 63. It's a perfect psalm to read in July because it talks about being really hot and really thirsty when the land is dry. So with all of the heat waves and the wildfires happening everywhere in the world right now, it is indeed a perfect season to read this psalm. So here is Psalm 63, 1 through 8. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. In a dry and parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory, because your love is better than life. My lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live. And in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night, because you are my help. I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you, and your right hand upholds me. May God bless the reading of this holy word today. Brian, will you come and place our stone on our altar table for us today? Thank you very much. So what does it feel like to be so hot out in the sun that you are absolutely miserable? Can you think of the last time you felt that way? Maybe it was just in the last couple of weeks, perhaps, because we've had some really hot, humid, muggy, miserable days here this summer. It's when you're in your nice, comfy house with the AC cranking, you open the door, and as soon as you step out, it's like you walk into a wall of heat and humidity, and you go, ugh, ugh. Immediately you feel it. Or a few days ago, I was standing outside, and it was hot, but it wasn't too bad. It was okay. It was bearable. But then the clouds that I didn't know were blocking the sun moved out of the way, and suddenly it felt like the heat rays were piercing into my skin like hot needles of sunlight. And I went, wow. I had to move and get out of the sun into the shade. Or a lot of times when I do yard work on Saturdays during the summer, and I'm outside for hours, sweating my face off, I'm cutting, I'm whacking, I'm chopping in my never-ending battle against nature. And then when I'm done, I'm tired and sweaty and gross, and I'm covered in grass. It's hard to stand up, but I can't sit down on the furniture because I'm too dirty, and I can't even touch my clothes because they're so hot and sweaty, and I just feel blah. But then even after you get clean all afternoon with your mouth, you're going because you're so dehydrated because you've sweat everything, and you just keep drinking water, and it feels like it's never enough. That's the kind of physical feeling that Psalm 63 is set in. When you're tired and you're hot and you're uncomfortable and you're really thirsty. Before the verses of this psalm begins, this is another one of the psalms in the book that has an inscription at the top of it. This one's inscription says it is a Psalm of David. So that could mean that David himself wrote the words of this psalm, or maybe it was written for King David. Someone gave it as a gift, or maybe David commissioned a musician to write it. or it could have been inspired by David's life later on and was written in memory of him. Either one. And this psalm's inscription connects it with a particular time in David's life when it said that he was in the desert of Judah. There were 2 times we know of that David was traveling, or hiding rather, in the desert of Judah. In 1 Samuel chapter 23, when he was running from Saul, the selfish, immature king before him. Or in 2 Samuel 15 to 18, when David was fleeing from his own son Absalom, who was leading a rebellion against him. So, probably one of those 2 times this psalm has in mind. Either way, David is not playing in the sand on vacation here. It is a time that his life was in danger. The future was uncertain, and the present for him was terrible. That's why he fled into the desert both of those times. Because nobody goes out into the desert for fun, right? And where he lived, the Judean wastes are not to be traveled lightly. It is barren and a rocky, desolate place. The sun beats down on you mercilessly. And if you don't have water, you'll die, because that's how deserts work. So that's the situation that this psalm writer, or David himself, was in. And what are the words that come to him in this situation? He says, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water." Interesting. I feel like if we were in that situation, we might have prayed, "Oh God, get me out of this desert, or at least give me some water. I'm really thirsty and I can't take it anymore." That would have been my prayer if I was in the desert. The psalmist does say that he's thirsty, but he says his biggest thirst is in his soul. He takes the physical sensation that he's feeling in the desert, that dehydrated, so thirsty feeling, and he says, I have that feeling for the presence of God. So he's not just praying, I could use a little more God in my life. A lot of people say that. And we might even say it too. We might even give them a little figure, and we might say, yeah, everybody needs a little Jesus in their life. Ha, 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 here's a little figure. But this is different from needing a little Jesus or needing a little more of God in your life. This is a desperate, physical, I don't know if I can keep going kind of thirst here. It's a powerful prayer. And do you pray like that on a regular basis? I feel like usually when we pray, it's just, dear God, I could use some help these days. If you're not too busy feeding the hungry and stopping all the wars, just whenever you got a minute, I could use some help, right? But that's not a thirst. It's not spiritual dehydration, like when you don't know how much longer you could last. It's more like a slow Tuesday prayer that we often say, not the, I'm at the end of my rope, God, kind of prayer. But this psalm is that kind of desperate prayer, a prayer that is desperate to feel God's presence. Because the absence of God's presence, the spiritual dehydration is so painful. The psalmist doesn't know how much longer he can go on without it. We usually sip on the presence of God. A little worship here, a little Bible study there, a little devotional thought, maybe one morning a week, a little spiritual meme we might share, and that's us done for the week. All good. But those are just little sips of God. The psalmist needs to gulp down God's presence because he is so thirsty for it. Instead of gulping down God's presence, our thirst usually leads us to other things in life. Things, stuff that we really want. And we say, oh man, if I could just have that, things would be so much better. Whatever that is, we're thirsty for it. Maybe it's a raise, a new job, a vacation we're desperate for, a new car that doesn't break down all the time, better kitchen appliances that aren't dirty and beat up and that actually work right. I don't know, whatever it is for you. That's usually what we thirst for. If I could just get that, oh, then everything would be great. Oh, I'm thirsting for it. It reminds me back in the summer of 2007, the very first iPhone was going to be released that June. And it was back when nobody had smartphones yet. So it was going to be like the coolest thing ever released, ever in the world. And my boss at the time was a real tech-savvy guy, and he really loved Apple computer products. So a few weeks before the iPhone was going to be released, I found myself sitting next to my boss in our staff break room, and I tried to make awkward conversation just because we were sitting next to each other awkwardly. And I said, so you looking forward to that new iPhone coming out in a few weeks? And he said, oh, I'm not just looking forward to it. I'm lusting for it. And I thought, oh, okay, that sounds a little inappropriate, but to each his own. I didn't say that out loud, of course, because he was my boss. But I definitely thought, that's a really strong word to use for some new gadget that's coming out. But yeah, he was thirsty for that new technology. It was a really neat new thing, especially at the time. But how much contentment and peace would it actually bring to his life, to our lives? And are there other better things that one could thirst for or yearn for, perhaps? We search for a lot of water in life that doesn't actually satisfy our soul's thirst. Our soul is naturally thirsting to connect with God. We're just not smart enough to realize it. So people might feel their soul thirsting for something. They don't know what it is, so they grab other things that they think will quench their soul's thirst. But it never does the trick. It's kind of like at night, if I've got a hankering for a snack, and I go to our kitchen, and maybe the pickings are slim, but I find a snack, and I eat a snack. But it wasn't the right snack. Have you ever eaten not the right snack? What happens afterwards? My hankering, it's still there. And I have wasted the food that I did snack on. So I'm left at the end of the night full of unfulfilling calories, which is so disappointed because I ate the wrong snack and it didn't satisfy me. So, when you snack responsibly. It's real. It's real. That's the biggest thing that happens in our house of an evening. We eat the wrong snack. The same thing happens in our souls. If you try to quench your soul's thirst with something that isn't of God, then you will still be thirsty and hungry. You will have ingested stuff that might be fine, but they weren't what you really needed. A raise, a new phone or a car, newer clothes, whatever. Those aren't bad things, but they aren't going to satisfy your soul. It's like the prophet Isaiah said, "Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare." That sounds nice, and it's free. My favorite price. We keep working and striving and spending on things that don't really make us feel all that better. So those things and that stuff just kind of piles up around us, not helping very much. There's an old story about a man who had saved all his money to build a bigger, newer house where his old small house had been. But then he realized that the well on his property wasn't equipped to pump enough water for his big new house and his fancy big new garden. So he dug in the ground, looking for water to put a new well. He dug 10 feet, hit dry rock, and stopped. So he moved to another spot and dug again, hit dry rock again, stopped. Moved again, dug another hole, didn't find water, and another, and another. And as time went on, the man passed away, leaving a whole yard full of shallow, dry holes, because he never dug deep enough to finally reach where the water was. You'd have to dig a lot deeper for that, to reach that water table deep under the ground that is the source. And I think a lot of our lives look like that. We keep digging shallow holes with careers or relationships, hobbies, people, houses, whatever, hoping that one of them will produce enough water to quench the thirst that we have inside. But none of them are deep enough to reach the well of living water. It's like Jesus said in our reading earlier, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give will never thirst." God is that water table underground where the living water is found. Everything else is just a hole in the yard. Psalm 63 helps us identify what our thirst really is and what can really give our souls fulfillment and peace. It also shows us what we can do about it. The psalmist here doesn't just complain about being thirsty and stays there. "Oh well, woe is me." Instead, look at verse 2. "I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and glory." So he's remembering right there. He's thinking back. He's out in the wilderness of life, thirsty and dehydrated, but he pulls up a memory of what it was like to connect with God back then when things were good. Those joyful, refreshing times. I remember what it was like, he's saying. I remember standing in God's presence and feeling my soul filled. So even out here, when my soul is dying of thirst, I remember and know that you are the one who satisfies me, O God. A lot of times in sermons, you'll hear me talking about different spiritual muscles that we need to exercise. We have different spiritual muscle groups, just like we have different physical muscle groups. And just like if you have a fitness routine or you're in a gym, you want to be comprehensive, so you work all your muscles. You can't just make every day leg day. You want to exercise all the muscle groups. You have different muscles physically and spiritually, and this is one of them that the psalmist is exercising. It's the muscle of remembering God's presence in your life. When you're in a dry season, and you might be in one right now, remember what it feels like to be connected with God. It doesn't mean that you pretend you're not thirsty at all, there's no problems in life, and everything's fine. It's all fine, I'm fine. Don't pretend that. But remember what satisfies your soul. Remember what it's like and seek it out. Don't waste time digging more shallow holes for things that will only distract you for a bit, but won't help you feel better. And then, what does the psalmist do next? Verse 5 says, "My soul will be satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you." So even though the psalmist is still in the desert, and nothing about his outside situation has changed, he still gives thanks, even before things on the outside have gotten better, because he believes that God is still at work, even in the driest of deserts. And that's not a fake smile, forced positivity kind of denial. This is an honest psalm. The whole time, the psalmist has said how thirsty his soul is. So just know that struggle and belief are not opposites. You can say, "God, I am desperate," and also, "God, I believe," in the same prayer. And that's okay, because that's actually what real faith looks like. It's honest, but it doesn't give up. Then in verse 6, the psalmist says that he thinks about God all night long. And if you have ever laid awake in the middle of the night, unable to make your brain stop thinking about every possible thing that could go wrong, or all the things you could be worried about, then you know what that's like. But instead of spiraling into anxiety, the psalmist turns his mind to God. Verse 8 says, "My soul clings to you." Not, "I try really hard to keep God close. Jesus is my co-pilot." But my soul clings to God. It's like the hymn we studied last Wednesday, "I will cling to the old rugged cross." It's the strong clutching of something important. Like if you're slipping and falling and you grab a rail so you don't fall down, you clutch it with all your might. Or you're driving through a blinding rainstorm and you can barely see in front of you. You're clutching the steering wheel so tight your knuckles are white. You're holding on for dear life. That's the reflex this psalm shows that we can have for God's presence. When life gets barren and we don't know if we can keep going, we can cling to God with a white-knuckled spirit. So here are the things I want you to think about this week. Where in your life have you been digging shallow wells? Where have you been settling for a sip of something that never really satisfies you? And what would it look like to direct that thirst towards God? Because this psalm's promise is that God's love is better than life and everything in it. Bigger than the bad stuff and the good stuff. Bigger than the problems that plague us, and bigger than the distractions we think will satisfy us. Bigger than whatever we've been digging for in all the shallow holes of our life. So this week, When you feel a thirst, a longing, don't just grab whatever distraction is closest. Go find the source of the water. Seek out the presence of God and connect with it. Sit in prayer and reach out with your heart. Even if you feel spiritually empty or distant, there is nowhere God cannot reach you and give you a peace that passes all understanding. So let us pray. Oh God, we confess that when times have been hard, we have not reached out for you like we really needed, especially when times have been good. We've let ourselves get distracted by other pursuits or things that don't really satisfy us. So we confess those to you now, O God. We confess that we have been settling for a shallow life, a shallow understanding of you and your love and our purpose. We want to go deeper. We want to plunge into the very depths so that we can connect with your living water and our souls will be truly refreshed. Let us feel that fulfillment this week. Help us to empty the wells of our heart so that your living water might rush in and we can feel your peace. Amen.